Everyone, welcome to Symphony University, episode 13, featuring Amit today from Spark to
Hey,
Movement, the community first blueprint for artist growth. I'm going to let Amit get into his bio and tell us all about what he's been working on and what he's been up to. There's lots of crazy new things happening, I feel, in the industry, specifically featuring and leaning towards the community first approach, and just artist growth. And you guys have done that in a way that you're going to have to tell us all about what the secret sauce is, at KOGO. I'm really excited that you're here today. And thank you so much for accepting this invitation to chat with all of these amazing people that have joined as well. And the floor is yours. Everyone ask questions throughout the session. If you guys have any questions, we'll reserve the questions for the end. But feel free to say anything in chat. We're here. I'm here. And yeah, we can get going.
beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much for having me. I just gave a little spiel about my relationship with Symphony. But for those of you who don't know, Meg is a brother to me, and what they're building is so special. And I'm honored to be able to share some space today. But yeah, I'm going to just say this again for anyone who just joined. This is just the beginning. We're going to cover a very specific part of the artist journey, which is the start. I'm going to imagine that we're in a room and I'm working with an artist for the first time, or I'm meeting a manager or someone who wants to work with someone for the first time. And I'm like, hey, here's the starting point from our perspective. Everyone does things differently. There's no one size fits all. Everything I say here, you could talk to another manager or another executive or another artist, and they could think it's totally wrong. And that's okay. That's the beauty of what we do. I've never been good at following rules. And the beauty of this industry, amongst many crazy things about it, is that there are no rules. And often the rule breakers tend to win. And so with that, I would love to jump in. Monique, we can go to the first slide. Oh, this is my bio. I don't like this slide. This is just about me. We can go to that though. Yeah, I run a company called KOGO. We're an artist community and creative incubator, super serving underrepresented talent. We've been able to generate over 500 million streams in the last 18 months, and partnered with some major record labels, independents, brands, press, etc. Our roster on the management side includes 7 incredible artists: Code, Ale Araya, Asha Muno, Connie, Rakma, Curtis Waters, and Nafisa's Bougie. And also a partner and sort of the chief strategist at DOST, which is a South Asian media company, that's generated over 60 million views on diaspora-led content, and also been part of some of the most, I think, culture-changing moments of the last 18 months regarding the diaspora. That's a little bit about me for the sake of credibility, but we can jump to the next. So how did we get here? I think that there's no better way for me to start the story of the community first approach without telling you how we got here. My name's Amit. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley in California. My parents, who are probably both attendees of this Zoom, are both from India. My mom grew up in DC. My dad was born in Lucknow. And I grew up in a very suburban Catholic environment. Being in the Valley was not like being in LA. I was very removed. I had no interest in music. I had no interest in arts. Honestly, I didn't think that was a thing you could even have a relationship to professionally. But I did from a really early age, was fascinated with storytelling. I think my parents did a really great job of just empowering my delusion at a young age. And we didn't have much. And so I knew I had to build stuff. I had to build stuff very early. And stories became very fascinating to me. When I was 13, I started getting into the world of social entrepreneurship and public policy and reimagining education. And I got fascinated with the way that narrative could impact change. And I dug in deeper and I started getting connected to companies like Teach for America and Ashoka and Peace First. And I started realizing that there was a missing space for young people to be part of these conversations. And that ended up leading to the beginning of me starting my first company, which was called My Name, My Story. It was about 10 years ago. And that was focused on delivering curriculum to young people around empathy, teamwork, innovation, and really, really focused on the idea of creating cultures of empathy amongst middle and high schoolers. This was like post or pre-Trump era, so very transitional. That ended up taking up my life for 10 years. It was incredible. We went on like this countrywide tour, which was nothing glamorous. It was like a bunch of La Quinta Inns and continental breakfasts. But I didn't realize that being in all these different places around the country would open up my eyes to so much. I think it would allow me to understand young people in a really unique way. And as much as I could give these workshops and I could share curriculum and we had these incredible experiences, there was nothing more powerful than when I would play Brockhampton in 2017 in the middle of a break. Nothing impacted those kids more than those songs and that feeling. And I started realizing that music, And I didn't really fully understand the power, but that music might be the most powerful vessel for narrative change. I remember very vividly in my, give me 1 second, actually. I need to, give me 1 second. It's a little loud here.
Hey guys, we're here. Yeah, started.
Sorry about that. I was getting very distracted. I think when I was in that experience, I had about 50 schools within about 6 months. And I was in public, private, charter, middle, high school around the country. And as I would go to these different places, there felt like there was one shared quality, which was their affinity for art, an affinity for these kinds of storytellers. And my brother at the time, his name is Ajay, he had started making music and I had bought him Logic a year before that. And I was like, yo, you got to make music for a year. And if you make music for a year, I'm down to buy this for you. And that was the only thing I knew about music at the time. But as I went around the country, I was like, young people are so inspired by this. And I'll never forget it. It was 2017. I went to a workshop and my mom came with me for the first time. It was in Fresno. We had like a district-wide partnership with all the schools there. And in the middle of the workshop, my dad called me and he was like, Amit, you got to come home. And I was like, what's going on? He's like, I don't know what's going on, but your brother had something happen to him. Like, you guys should just come home. He's in the hospital. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? He's like, it's something with his brain. And I remember we got into the car and we drove back 3 hours from Fresno to San Fernando Valley, and we were going to the same hospital me and my brother were born. And I get there, and my parents didn't really have the language for it at the time, not to their fault, because it was so early. And he was dealing with some severe mental health issues that put him in an adolescent rehabilitation facility. As you can imagine, I'm like big brother going to see my younger brother in this space when I just come from doing empathy training. It was a bit of a punch in the throat. And I remember he was there for 10 days. And afterwards, I was like, yo, what do you want to do now? And he was like, I just want to make music. And I was like, okay, what can I do to help? He was like, well, you can help, like, brand me and make videos and help me kind of tell my story like you've done for yourself and your company. And I was like, okay. I didn't know anything about music. I didn't know anything about marketing. I didn't know anything about the music industry. But I knew that my brother and his story was so important. And at that point, I was just a big brother trying to help him. And so I was like, dude, I got you. I canceled the last 25% of the tour. We hired someone in to take care of it. And I just went into service mode. And it was like 7 months before I had to go back to school. And we started releasing mixtapes. That's when the koala was drawn. And we just caught the bug. We caught the bug for sharing. And I went back to college at North Carolina. And I was a junior going into senior year, would have been a senior, but I took the gap year. And long story short, I dropped out to manage my brother. And as you can imagine, it made no sense. If you look at that photo of us at the very bottom there, it's me and him in our parents' house figuring out our first music video. And Code ended up getting signed about 9 months after I dropped out. We were sitting in our parents' garage, smoking a lot of weed, working on a project called Treehouse that still hasn't come out to this day. And he ended up getting signed 6 months later, and that became our like post-college college of the music business. And it was this incredible experience. He was in all these amazing rooms, and then the pandemic happens 2 years later, and we're sitting there in our same parents' house, feeling like we're back at square one, and we were so confused, and we were so scared. And I think as we were there, like a lot of us here, I'm sure we're sitting in the pandemic, like, yo, what the is going on? And for me, I'd left everything. I dropped out of college. I had sacrificed my whole life kind of to focus on this mission, and the music industry just stopped. And I think there was so much clutter around information and misinformation, disinformation in that moment that, I remember entering one of the darkest periods of my life. And me and my brother in that moment were like, yo, we can't be the only ones feeling this way. There has to be other people who are feeling isolated, especially people who look like us, especially people from Black and Brown communities who don't have the access to information, that don't have access to relationships or capital, but have something to say, and should take up space. And that became the inception point for KOGO. We had a couple months left in a recording budget at the beginning of 2021 in January, and we moved into a house for 3 months. And it was me, my brother, who's an artist named Code, um, and this artist named Ale Araya, who's this incredible artist and producer who grew up in the Valley, and Brett Prendergast, who's this amazing creative, a designer, model, everything in between. And we were all kids. I was 23 years old, maybe 22 years old. My brother was, turning 18, I think. Ale was 20. We were all just kids figuring it out. And what was supposed to be 3 months turned into 3 years. I realized that my work was as a manager was under this larger umbrella of building this community. And in building that community, I realized that it was under a larger umbrella of building this incubator. And I think going back to my education roots, the next phase of KOGO is going to be figuring out how to bring the experience we were able to provide, the 6, 7 artists that we've been able to develop and manage over the last couple of years, and the community we've been able to inspire. How do we bring that to the world? And so by the grace of God, the last 3, 4 years, we've had 30 plus events and tons of records and all these things. But ultimately, the inception point of KOGO was probably the same thing as a lot of people in this room right now, which is like, yo, where do I find community and where do I find a safe space in this really confusing industry? And that's how we got here. So that's the context. And with that, this whole presentation is going to be about, a community first approach to artist growth, which to me means where do we start? If you're an artist or a manager or an executive at the beginning point of trying to build a brand, an artist project, anything in between, what's the process? And not the playbook, but the process, the combination of the math and the magic that gets us there. We can jump to the first slide. So how do we define community? I think the new age artist stack is something really interesting to think about. I think in the past, it used to be artist at the center and then manager, and then you have label, publisher, agent, etc. And the artist was told, hey, you only need to have one partner for all of these things. You only need to have, or you can only own this and you can't own that. I think none of that matters anymore. These roles are very important. Don't get me wrong, you need a team. But I think it's more important for the artist to sit in the middle and say, hey, I'm the CEO. I'm the leader. I'm the lead storyteller. At one point, I'll maybe hire a CEO, but at the beginning, it's just you, right? And what do I need around me, just like any other business or operation, to grow? And that's going to be different based on who you are as an artist, right? That could be a manager, that could be an agent, that could be all these things, but also just think about the actual uh, the work. Forget the roles, right? We need great music. We need great visuals. We need a great live presentation and package. We need a great story, right? We need these basic things, and many people will assemble that. So, what does community mean in 2025 for new artists? I think community means that initial group, that initial circle of individuals, even if it's just one person, that allows you to start building one of these paths, whether it's the music, whether it's the live performance, whether it's the visuals. And what are the key parts of an artist team? I think initially it's really just someone who cares as much as you, who's down to bet on you and learn with you more than it is any big manager or any big label. I think it's having someone who can help you on the content side, make sure that someone who understands your vision or that you can coach to understand your vision is going to help you execute it, even if it's someone holding an iPhone at the beginning and then it evolves to someone manning a $10,000 production. Content is, I would say, number one. And alongside that, I think having someone who can be honest with you about your music and be someone who can help you look in the mirror. I think as an artist, it's so hard to look in the mirror that I think just having an individual to look in the mirror and challenge you as you grow and you challenge them, I think is the most important part of the initial team. So someone to help present you visually and someone to help push you sonically. These are often the same person at the beginning. And often that same person turns into many people as you go. But at the beginning, it's really just about the music. And it's about, in my opinion, the visuals around the music because that sets the stage for the story. Now, how do you find them? I think the only way you find them is by sharing. I think the only way you find these people is by sharing and existing. But before you share and exist, you have to curate. So let's jump to the next slide. So the prerequisite to any action, right? We're looking for this community. We're looking to have friends who are artists. We're looking to have a great team. We're looking to have great fandom. We're looking to have a great live business. We want all these things, right? When I sit down with an artist, before we do anything, whether it's with Asha, 5 years ago, whether it's with Code 8 years ago, whether it's with Rakma 3 years ago, whether it's with Nafis a year and a half ago, we go through a really important exercise that if you're down to do it with me, feel free to take out a pen and paper and write as we're working through this where we talk about the mission, the vision, and the values. Before doing anything, we reflect on the mission, the vision, and the values. The mission is what's the purpose, right? What is the larger purpose that this artist project, that this song, that this album, that this human being, that this character is connected to? What are the existing movements? What is the deep, granular why that makes this matter to the world? I can give an example. For Code, my brother, his mission from the very jump, he told me something very, very powerful. He was like, I want to be an artist who, at his core, is able to make men cry and women dance. He wants to have the vulnerability and honesty to be authentic enough to open up people's hearts. And he also wants to represent joy in a way that is so cathartic that people can dance to it. And I think he has this deep, deep, deep conviction for reframing the way masculinity, the way brownness, the way queerness, the way all these things are presented. And that's always been the mission. So the first is, what is the mission? And that doesn't need to be a quick answer. It could be that your mission evolves over time. But right now, what is the mission? If you're working on an album right now, what is the mission attached to that album? The second is the vision, right? A lot of people could have the same mission. We could all be tied to this purpose of trying to, let's say this, even to enhance South Asian representation, right? I know a lot of the folks in this chat are South Asian. That's a mission that a lot of people are tied to, right? But everyone's vision for what that looks like is totally different, right? There might be someone that needs to become the next Jai Paul, right? They might need to be really, really, really incredible at pushing the sound, being, the most interesting and compelling producer that they can be. And maybe their audience isn't in the billions, but the millions of people that know them are important enough and they move culture in a very different way, right? Another vision could be to be the next Beyonce, right? You might see your vision to be, hey, I want to take up stadiums, There's an artist I work with named Rekma where, her mission, I won't speak for her, but her mission is deep. And if you look at the music, you'll be able to tell what it is. But her vision is, hey, I can be a global superstar for the right reasons. And I have to take up that space to open up new space, right? So when you identify the mission, what the macro movement you're connected to is, you focus on what your place is in that mission and you define your vision. I hope that's starting to make sense. And then lastly, the values. And I think this is actually the most important thing. The values are the actual tent poles that guide you through this whole process, right? The values could look like honesty. They could look like authenticity. They could look like femininity. It could look like diversity. It could look like a series of things, but I think ultimately these values also play into the color and tone of the brand, right? You're going back to the code example, one of his values is joy. Joy is the baseline of the way he's going to accomplish and realize this vision, right? I think that the values ultimately create the color for how you make the music, how you tell the story visually, and how you tell it to the world in the live context. And so this whole exercise is the first step in identifying three main questions as an artist. Who are you serving? Why should they care? And how do you decide where to start? I'm going to reflect on each of them. Who are you serving is at core. It's who else aligns with this mission? Beyond even musically, who in the world, right, sociologically align with this mission? Who are they? What do they look like? How old are they? What do they dress like? Where do they like to go out, right? Why should they care? Number two. And that really goes into the values, right? Everyone might have the same vision and mission, but the values are what separates people who build super fandoms, right? And when you figure out why they should care, it's these key tent poles of your own personal brand that you'll have to reflect on that tie into these values, right? In other words, what you might think is the reason they should care might be something completely different, right? And that might be some fact finding. You doing this reflection is something that you should do in community. You should do with other artists. You should do with people on your team. It's a process that is best, I think, effective in collision. And the third and most important is, how do you decide where to start? Right. So when you look at this mission and you look at the vision associated with where you're trying to go, and then you identify the values, you're able to look at all that and go, where do I start? Sonically, visually, and on the community and live context. Let's jump to the next slide. The mission vision values becomes the North Star of the entire campaign. Everything falls under the mission, the vision, and the values. If a song, if a music video, if a live performance opportunity doesn't align with these North Stars, we're never going to, we might create it, right? We might create the idea, we might iterate on it, but it probably won't be shared. If it doesn't fit the framework, it's not a bad idea, but it just might not be the first one or the right idea. I had a really great conversation with Mac Miller's, one of his first managers, and he gave me some advice that I'll never forget. He goes, my role for Mac wasn't to tell him what to do. It was to tell him what he could do first. And I think organizing where you go and what you do as an artist, because you might be an artist like, dude, I want to fucking play festivals next year. Or I might want to, have two different artist projects and might want my visuals to look like this and my live to look like this and my merch to look like this. I think when you look at the mission, vision, values, and you look at your North Star and you look at each of those categories, the way you decide even what to do first is what aligns most with that intersection. What is most aligned with the mission? What's most in line with your vision for how the mission should be executed? And what's deepest, most in line with your values? So when you define your why as an artist, and then you paint the picture in your head of what your ideal community is, right? You can draw it on this whiteboard. Like, my community is exactly this. You should be able to visualize it before you see it, right? Development to me begins at that process. Before it, it's human development, right? All of this is deeply human, right? Artist development is human development. But we can't even get to the artist part unless we think about the human. So I think that is the inception point of the reflection that we do with our artists. And we go very deep because when we press go, we have to move very fast. And to balance authenticity with growth, we need to all be aligned on what this framework is. I hope that makes sense. Let's jump to the next slide. So what does artist development look like in practice? I broke it down into three things at the beginning: music, visuals, and live. So focus on the music. I think one of the biggest misconceptions right now in the music industry amongst new artists is that the reason their music isn't growing is because their content is not good. I say this with the most love in the world. There's so much music that comes out every day. It might even be more than the content about music that comes out every day. There might be more audio recordings than videos with audio recordings in them every day. The number one thing that separates great artists from good artists or great artists from people who don't get attention is ultimately the recordings. And I think people need to remind themselves that originality is birthed with the music. And so there's four different things that I think of to start. Number one is share your drafts. At the beginning, you have to share your drafts. Tyler, the creator, was sharing he had basically SoundCloud before SoundCloud. He was sharing everything on YouTube, right? Every one of his drafts. You were seeing him iterate in real time. Now we see this brand that's associated with the highest art and the most sort of highbrow textures. But at the beginning, he was even sharing his drafts. Even Frank Ocean at the beginning had a Tumblr page, right? He has SoundCloud demos as Lonnie grew for years and years, right? You can't grow and your music can't get better if you hold it. You have to share your drafts. You have to create and share, create and iterate, create and create and create and create. And you don't need to release everything. Even if sharing looks like walking into one of your homies' house and being like, yo, I just want to show you this record. Or maybe showing your grandmother. Or maybe showing a friend you haven't talked to in a while. Or maybe just you have an online community of people that you're exchanging ideas with. You have to share to grow. Number two, build your crew. And obviously this is very like on the nose, but I say this in the sense of artists, producers, writers, instrumentalists, engineers, vocalists. The internet is going to bring the people that you want to the table when you start sharing your drafts. I think about some of the beginning stages for artists with Ale Araya and Asha Amuno. They both had TikTok moments that weren't viral by any means. In fact, none of you probably even know the songs that were associated with those moments. But those initial moments of them sharing their drafts in 2021, there was a song called Janet that Ale shared just the hook for. And just that hook alone ended up introducing her to so many like-minded women, specifically women producers who wanted to work with her just off of that snippet that then she realized was actually such a special song to share, right? That doesn't always happen. Sometimes snippets connect and you're like, dude, I hate that this was a snippet that connected. But in that moment, sharing the drafts led to her finding her community. And so I think the way you build your crew is not like going out and networking. Share things that are valuable enough and people will show up at your door. You just have to be confident enough to share. And remember, you're never going to be this small again. Like, we're never going to be this small again. At one point, you're going to have to be like, yo, I have 1 million people watching my every move. I can't drop this random song. Now you can, right? Rid yourself of that disbelief. Suspend the disbelief for the sake of that own growth, right? And the last two are pretty straightforward. Growth is fundamentally a product of creative collision. I've never been around or myself, I've never grown as an artist or seen any artists that I love grow if they weren't around people that they could collide with creatively. Not in a unsafe way, but in a magical way. Creative collision is the birth child of brilliant ideas, right? I remember at the KOGO home, Code would be upstairs working on one of his songs, and then Asha would be producing drums on the left, and then Ali would be playing chords downstairs, and Connie would be in a session in the living room. And they were all building such unique worlds, but just being able to hear each other and push each other, I think led to some really great art. And lastly, escape competition by authenticity. It's something that, people have heard a lot, but I think it's really important in music, on the music side. Again, everyone wants to be super cool visually and have incredible verticals and stand out. If your music, if the audio, if the actual songs are original, and if they can't go get you anywhere else, if you're crafting a sonicescape that is so compelling that they can't go click on another Spotify profile, it might take longer for you, but when it hits, your conversion is going to be so much higher. Fans are going to care so much more. And so focus on originality. Rid yourself of the notion of like, oh my God, this is trending on your rap caviar and today's top hits. I need to make pop music and indie music and country music because this is happening. Yo, if you start doing that at the beginning, by the time you're good at that thing, the trend will go away. And you'll be like, holy shit, I just learned something that is no longer trendy, right? Take the time to figure out what your authentic sound is and what your, whether it's on the writing side, whether it's on the production side, whether it's anything else. And honestly, we could do deep dives on each of these individually for hours. So like I said, everyone here, I'm down to do individual conversations with anyone who's interested, just in the sense of to be able to dig into all of these because it's so dense, you know, but we're going to keep going. Cool. Going to the visuals. So first step is always the music. Then it's like, cool, we have some music to work with. How do we build visuals around this? Now, we already have our mission, vision, values framework at the top, right? So we're not going into these creative conversations blind. With anybody that we're curating around our artists, directors, photographers, we want to make sure that we're coming to the table with open arms for collaboration, but also with a clear vision on the texture of the brand, on the framework of the brand, on the adjacency of the brand. What are all these things that these directors and partners, visual partners, these geniuses need to be able to activate their genius, right? So another exercise to start. I think there's three main questions you have to ask yourself as an artist or anyone who's trying to build a public brand to be able to also be sane and like have good mental health. You think about your identity and you reflect on three main questions. What is for me? What is for my core fans? And what's for the world? What I mean by that is there's parts of our identity that we may not want to give to anyone else. You know, like there's an artist that I work with that talking about her relationship to her ethnicity is not something that for many years she wanted to do. That was for her, right? But then she realized for her core fans, she actually loved that her core fans knew that she spoke this specific language. And that was actually okay. They could know this language, but maybe she didn't want to lean into it on her end. And what's for the world? Well, she actually wants everyone to know that she loves Beyonce, right? And that's an identity layer that's for the world. Everyone should know that, right? It's a funny example, but I think all of the things that we like and that make up our identity, you know, our ethnicity, the things we believe in, the clothes we wear, the shows we like, the trauma we've experienced, the joy we've experienced, the relationships we've been in, every part of our whole identity, I think we have to look and say, what is for me privately? What is for my core fans? And what's going to be for the world? I think that's the number one reflection because not everyone should be out here making lo-fi TikTok videos every day. We're way past that era, right? Some people might not like that. Other people might love that. Other people might love showing people their morning routine, right? But I think reflecting on that makes it a little bit more granular and a little bit less overwhelming, right? What is for me? What is for your core fans? And what's for the world? And then we think about the subcultures, right? So if you're a huge fan of anime, right, and you might make, you know, electronic indie music, let's say, indie electronic intersectional music, you might not think that the fact that you like anime is the reason your music will break, but it very well might. In other words, all of these different identity pieces, whether it's fandoms, whether it's even, you know, specific, you might like a specific moisturizer that has a cult following around it. Anything that has a following around it, right? I think we need to look at what are the subcultures associated with my artist brand, right? So whether it's that you like anime, whether it's that you like, excuse me, whether it's that you like anime, whether you're a huge NBA fan, whether it's you are really interested in spirituality and manifestation, whether it's that you're obsessed with a niche comic book series, right? These are all initial trigger points to actually find your initial set of fans. And so the questions you have to think of are where do the niches live digitally? Who are they? What do they dress like? What do they listen to? Where are they from? What do they believe in? And who do they revere? Right? So where do these niches live digitally? Do they live on TikTok? Do they live on Instagram? Do they live on YouTube? Do they live on Discord? Do they live on Twitch? Because these are all real, almost like we have to think of them like real life spaces on the internet, that real communities are being built, right? I'm not someone that's made a ton of internet friends when I was younger. If anything, I've got more akin to the internet now. But I'm realizing these are like human spaces in a lot of ways in terms of the way people interact with each other, right? So where do the niches live digitally? And anime is an amazing example because TikTok is a well of vibrance for anime creators. There's so much amazing AMV edits everywhere. And a lot of people know that, right? Who are they? What do they dress like? What do they listen to, et cetera? Where are they from? It's all to get to, before we even create a visual, we're reflecting on who we're serving, right? Let's get to the next slide. And now two main things that I wanted to talk about when it comes to visuals, because we could go so deep into this, but I want to be specific. I think the canvas theory is something that I'm really passionate about, and I think it's really, really compelling. I think the world is impressed and compelled and moved by seeing familiar canvases with unfamiliar characters. When we think about this equation, we think about a lot of the acts that have broken in the last couple of years, and they often have something about them, whether it's the kind of music that they make, whether it's where they're from, whether it's what they look like, that is deeply familiar in a way, right? It's like you've heard that melody before. But there's something very unfamiliar about them at the same time, right? Maybe they're a character that's never stood up in that genre, right? I think about a Shibuzi, right? He is the ultimate unfamiliar character in front of a familiar canvas, right? A bar song Tipsy is a song that when you hear, you're like, oh my God, this could have been made by anyone. It's familiar. And then when you see the visual and you see him, you're like, oh my God, this is so compelling, right? There's an immediate juxtaposition that gets you, right? And I think you can look at throughout history of many, many examples. I don't think, this is a one-off. I think when we take familiar canvases and we put unfamiliar characters in front of them, you create this conversation that I think is intrinsically viral. But you can flip that too, right? Sometimes it's actually a very familiar character, someone that you're used to seeing in media, someone that is everywhere. But the canvas they're in front of is completely unfamiliar. And I think that juxtaposition to me is magic. I don't even think I have to explain it too much, but I think when you really, really reflect on it, there's something in that equation that is really powerful. So I think sometimes those familiar canvases can be going back to your subcultures. They could be, oh my God. I mean, Megan Thee Stallion's a great example. She's, a huge fan of anime, actually, right? And that's been a huge part of her storytelling. And the fact that she's someone that you would never expect to really dive into that world, especially as a rapper, right? Like hip hop music hasn't been associated with anime culture as much as it used to be in many years. I think that in like that sort of juxtaposition creates such an interesting level of fandom and super fandom around a storyteller. And then lastly, on visuals, and this is for all the artists that are in the room, the Frank Ocean effect. I think that post Frank Ocean, because of his massive success and the fact that he outputs no content or not much visuals, right? We've created this like aura of mystery around most artists, right? Artists want to be mysterious. You have an artist like Playboi Carti, right, who used to post all the time, everywhere, SoundCloud, this, that, and now he's the greatest artist in the world and he's incredibly mysterious, right? I think that there's some artists that should absolutely take that route if they've already built an audience around being that way, right? No doubt, right? Cardi, Frank, they should stay doing what no one's telling Frank to make content, right? This conversation is about a new artist and it's about the development point. I think that there's still a level of mystery and lore that can be preserved while also making sure that you're accessible enough to drive superfans. In other words, I think right now people want to see something that's both incredible and mind-blowing, and also something that's deeply human and nuanced and authentic. And I think that the intersection of joy and lore, which is a very funny intersection, but I think Tizo Touchdown's a very interesting example of this, where Tizo, especially when he was really breaking through, last year when everyone's eyes were around him, it was such an incredible campaign. And shout out to Amal and the team, because I think the lore, at first it was this like kind of fluffy, bright, colorful brand that people were like wondering, how serious is this? But because he committed so hard to the feeling of joy, right? And joy became the art in a way. It created this mystery around Tizo because he committed so hard to the character that now we look at him and we're like, wow, if I had a whole, 2, 3 hour length interview with Tizo right now that really dug into his character, it would be really, really interesting. But at this point, he has kind of this intersection that I think is really foolproof and really, really strong, right? And I think Frank Ocean and Dijon and a couple of these other references that we're talking about, I think ultimately they let their music talk at the beginning more than they let their visuals or their mystery talk. The fact that the music was so compelling, the fact that the music moved mountains and moved generations of people allowed them to take a step back. And so the goal is absolutely to get to the place where the music has impacted the world where we can just not say anything because there's so much out there. But at the beginning, I think it's going to be a little bit more of an intersection. And I think some of these subcultures and some of these equations with the canvas theory can help us think of ways that we can stand out at the beginning of that visual journey. Let's jump to the next slide. And lastly, artist development in context of live. Focus on real life. Three main things here. Lean into home. Identify the artist base. Right now, it's not always that the artist's hometown where they were born is actually their base. In a lot of ways, that actually might be the least engaged community at first. I found that a lot of artists' hometown are actually the people that are most skeptical about the artist, and it's actually places around the artist, whether it's on the other side of the coast or digitally, etc. But wherever home is for the artist is really, really, really important. You know, we have an artist named Nafisas Bougie who's from Bangladesh and then moved to South Africa and moved to Angola and then back to South Africa, and now he lives in New York City. When I met him, he was in New York City, and I realized that ultimately home for him would have to be New York because that's the story he's trying to tell. And so I think identifying what your version of home is, just like every great hip hop artist ever had, start with home. And when we think about the beginning of, you know, your live journey, it shouldn't be about trying to go on tour or open up with someone. It should be about 10 to 15 people in the middle of the living room playing music for each other. And then it could be 30 to 40 people in a small little studio doing a performance for each other. And it looks like a sound check, but it's really a show. And then it could be 100 people. And I promise you that build will pay off tenfold as we go, more than anything else. Number two, serve, attend, and give. Before taking up space, before launching your new event property or doing anything, participate, engage, and show up. Look around in that local community, digitally or IRL, and show up, engage, study. Study, study, study. I think there's a lack of just true obsession with being a nerd. Like, I'm a true nerd and I love studying this shit. I think artists and managers and partners should study the hell out of things that already exist to create what's about to exist. And then lastly, innovate via collaboration. I think this is just figure it out. Once you identify who the home is, and once you show up in the community enough, you look at left and right and figure out who are the people around you where you align with their values. What are the spaces, whether it's studios, locations, venues, human beings, clubs, collectives? What are the spaces that align with your values? And then what spaces don't exist yet? And figure out that intersection, and that's your sweet spot of engagement. That's all for the artist development section. We're going to jump into some case studies now. So I just talked a lot and gave a lot of theoreticals. For the next 10 minutes, I just want to walk you through some case studies of how we've deployed all these tactics before and how not every artist at all can do the same thing. You kind of have to do everything and then figure out what works and double the fuck down immediately. And so coming off the back of Live, I want to talk about the story of Asha Muno real quick. Asha's someone that I met in 2021. He was just transitioning out of the pandemic and was sort of figuring out his next move as an artist. He didn't really have a team around him, etc. And you know, Asha to me is an artist who represents the highest brow of creative output, right? He just did a colors performance. He just, toured with Black Odyssey. Like, he's on his sort of highbrow journey. I knew that from the jump. But ultimately, I also knew that Asha needed to grow, right? But I recognized that, hey, this was 4 years ago. Alternative R&B, alternative hip hop 4 years ago wasn't as big as it was now. And so we're not going to be able to build this business just off of its streaming growth. And so me and Asha talked a lot about how can we use a community-driven approach to build visibility around him as an artist, even before he has a viral song, or even before he has hundreds of millions or anything like that streams. And he had this idea called waiting room. Waiting room was what looked like a safe space to Asha in his head. It was, a black kid from Moreno Valley, California, trying to imagine what does safety look like and flipping a word that's often associated with anxiety, waiting room, to something that's safe and warm and colorful and filled with art. And so what waiting room ended up turning into, we worked on it together and we built it into a event property where basically we rented out unique spaces and we brought together Black-owned businesses, Black and brown artists from Moreno Valley, his hometown, and we brought them to LA. And combined it with a bit of the LA community. And we hosted these series of basically an art gallery meets performance, meets community gathering. And before we even did a headline show for Asha Muno, we did Waiting Room #1 in 2022. Asha and I had dropped 3 songs before that. 3 songs. One of them was a song called Zigzaggin'. It had like 3 or 4 million streams at the time. Awesome, right? The first time we ever had a song even cross 1 million, I think, at that moment. But he wasn't doing any crazy numbers. He wasn't able to sell out tours across the country. But we had built a community in Los Angeles that we knew we could double down on. And the first waiting room, we brought out Overcast. We brought out Merlin Wood from Brockhampton. We had Giddy and Connie performing. And we did 250 tickets, $10 each. And we donated every dollar to the Melanin Youth Foundation in Moreno Valley. That was Asha's first headline show in LA. And it was incredible. We realized, hold on, this is bigger than Asha. Waiting Room by Asha Muno is now the brand. And so we did another one 3 months later. Mind you, this is an artist with less than 100,000 monthly listeners. 3 months later, we do Waiting Room #2. We add in a few special guests. We increase the size of the venue. We do 350 tickets in 3 months. Now, at that point, Asha has no digital data. He has no traditional motion. No labels or publishers are calling him. But when they see him do 500 tickets on a philanthropic event that he's curating and building with these other artists in the scene around him across many mediums, partners started to wake up. Waiting Room then became the emphasis for Asha to sign his first record deal. And in the most incredible fashion, last year, MasterCard partnered with Asha to do a year-long accelerator. And as part of that partnership, they told us the reason they gave Asha the deal they gave him, which was a great deal, was because of Waiting Room. And so initially we bet on ourselves. We had actually Symphony sponsored the first Waiting Room, which was amazing. And then Slingshot sponsored the next one. And we lost a lot of not, I think personally, I think I probably lost a little bit of money on those initial waiting rooms. But Asha didn't really lose a lot of money, but he definitely took a bet on himself and he sacrificed a lot to make those happen. He didn't take a performance fee. He was, going out of pocket for a lot of things. He was giving a lot for those initial years and working another job to be able to pay for it alongside his team. But ultimately, 2, 3 years later, that becomes the thing that makes a massive corporation say, hey, you know what? Not only do we want to partner with you, but we want to partner with this IP that you're building in Waiting Room and really impact community. And so I think right now, partners are actually valuing community and culture just as much as they're valuing data, right? And of course, when you can have that intersection, it's the sweet spot. So Waiting Room has proven to be an anchor for Asha. He still has less than 20,000 followers on Instagram. He still has less than, some of those major artists may have on the streaming front. But Asha's built a really incredible cult fan base, an incredible live business to start, and ultimately has an IP and Waiting Room that he can evolve into something really magical on his own terms. So I'm really, really proud of that example, and I think it's really a great model because it was ultimately just a bunch of kids figuring it out to start. Let's jump to the next one. This is a fun one. So this is Code. So the story about my brother that I told about the beginning, or the story I told you guys about my brother at the beginning, this is my brother. Code is my brother. And we've been doing this together quite some time. And, he had initial releases in 2021, but then had a bunch of health issues for 3 years. And so he stopped releasing from 2021 to 2024. And I remember for me as a brother, I was like, yo, when you come back, you're not going to have a rookie version of me. He bet on me when we started. I was the brother manager. And then when he came back, I was like, yo, I'm going to turn up, so I'm ready to be able to serve you. And, Ajay's been working on Treehouse, the album I mentioned at the beginning of this, like workshop during the story. He's been working on that for a while. And so we had Treehouse, and we know that the brand for Ajay is going to evolve to this sort of Tierra Whack level, cadence that we want to get to. But we also know who we're serving at the beginning. And so Deepika is a song that he had written in 2022. Ajay told me he wanted to come back to the world with a new record. And I was like, yo, we should do Deepika. And I think he was hesitant because I'm sure all of you, especially a lot of the South Asians in the room, he was like, I don't want to just be the brown rapper. Super fair, super fair. And at the same time, Ajay and I had been through enough in this industry where we realized, yo, we live in a world of infinite digital chances. If you think you're going to be perceived as the first version of who you are to the world, you're completely wrong. In fact, look at any incredible artists that we love. The way they were introduced was so different than what they became, right? And I think because social media has enhanced the proximity to our friends, we feel very perceived at the beginning. But ultimately, whatever you can do to grab your core, right? Going back to it, whoever we can find that aligns with the mission, the vision, and the values, we need to find them first. Right? You need to find them first. And Deepika, we knew, would at least find the initial swell of human beings that we knew could believe in the code mission. Deepika was quite an interesting campaign. The beginning of the song is, I had a biggest crush on Deepika when I was only 6, drinking out my fucking sippy cup. It's a pretty clear, angle I would say you could approach. The Deepika campaign was interesting because it started with shout out my brother Rajid from DOST. We knew that was an interesting hook, right? And the first thing that I wanted from that campaign was that it couldn't just be about the audio, because if it wasn't about code, we wouldn't win. Because Deepika as a song is good, but code as an artist is really good. And so I was like, Ajay, we need to go to New York, and you need to wear your outfit, the green, the colors, everything. Be you, but do it in the greatest canvas of hip hop, right? Going back to remember, the familiar canvas is New York City. And the unfamiliar character is Code walking through New York City with his green on and with the koala in his hand. And boom, you put a great art piece at the center of that, and you have something special. We flew him out there. I think we spent our last couple $1,000s on that. Rajid, our brother, bet on it. and we paid him whatever we could, but he really took a bet on us. And Ajay and Rajiv worked side by side to nail those initial visuals. I remember I was in Berlin for Asha's color show, and I see him go viral in March of 2024, and I started crying. I was on the fucking Lime scooter, I started bawling. I was like, oh my God, like he's gonna do it. As you can tell, this is quite an emotional journey for me and my brother. And so I was like, no way, no way. It was March. Shit's going crazy, 500,000 views, blah, blah, blah. The record is not done. Ajay hadn't read in the second verse. So we had a 3-month lag between when Deepika went viral and when it came out. And I was like, oh my God, next time we do this, we have to have the record ready. And next time we have to have the album ready. And that 3 months was kind of scary. We kept it growing. Of course, the momentum started going down. So we were like, how do we recontextualize this, right? And then we were like, hold on, let's find more canvases. And that's when they went to Punjabi Delhi. And if you look in the right there, that Punjabi Delhi moment was really special because when the record came back out, we go, you know what? Forget vertical. We're going to go horizontal for this. And we're going to build a premise that everyone can relate to. You're going to see a fucking Indian uncle outside of a Punjabi deli that everyone knows. It's a classic hip hop monument in a lot of ways. And you're gonna see this kid who you've never seen before, and he's gonna provoke a little bit, and we're just gonna let it rock. And I think we knew that we knew that it was gonna be something, but I think it became bigger than we could have ever imagined. And so that video comes out, and I start seeing, some girls online making transition videos to the song. And at that moment is when it became bigger than code. I go, Ajay, this is not about you anymore. We already introduced you. Now it's about everyone else. And I remember the highest performing video that we posted for Deepika was a reaction video from our baby cousin, where she reacted to seeing Deepika Padukone share the song. And at first, Ajay was going to post that on Reels, and it was going to be his reaction. And I was like, no, 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 Ajay, it has to be our cousin. Because everyone can relate to having a cousin be proud of them. Not everyone can relate to being you. You're a superhero. Right now, it's not about you. But this song is going to be rewarded better if everyone can see like a family member reacting to that. That video did 8.1 million views in 3 days. And I think that's sort of looking at all of the pieces of what we talked about and being able to, in the moment, you have to move faster than lightning in that moment, right? When there's a moment that's where you have to move faster than lightning, and we were able to look around and say, let's make this a bigger story than anyone could ever have thought. And from there, I kid you not, we spent $0 in the United States in spending on that song when all of that was happening. Every little moment we could find, SZA liked it, this person, we just kept blasting it. It was just every day. And shout out to my whole team, Brandon, Gush, Karen, Akash, the whole squad. We were every day in the weeds working that record. And ultimately, it didn't become a huge hit, but it taught us a lot. And so we go, all right, you know what? Next time we think we have one of these, we're going to have the record ready, and we're going to have the visuals ready, and we're going to press go. And so a year goes by, and we have the album, more fleshed out, and I was just like, yo, I'm ready to come back. And he tells me about this concept he had for a song called Dirty. And he had the whole idea. He's like, yo, everyone in the world is talking about, and I'm seeing it. He was like, I'm seeing it. And Ajay's a real artist. He's like, I'm pissed that like these white women are wearing Scandinavian scarves and calling them, or wearing dupattas and calling them Scandinavian dresses. Like, this is fucking ridiculous. And he goes, also like, dirty, bro. Like, this is what it's about, bro. Like, the reason I wrote this song is because like people be calling me dirty. People didn't think I was fly. People didn't think I was hot. He goes, this is what the song is about. And I was like, holy shit. And he started writing the idea. And I remember one thing I told Ajay at the beginning of this year, I go, Ajay, you're a dancer. You need to lean in and like become part of the dance community. Because if you're going to take up space in this community as a dancer, you need to serve the community. And so he did it on his own. He went back to the basics. He reached out to all these people, shout out Vinayani and all the amazing women and Ria and all these amazing women who've been part of the Dirty campaign. And he really, really, really leaned in with them. And on his own accord, built a crew who saw his vision for Dirty. And he came to me, he's like, Amit, I need this amount of money. And I'm gonna put in this amount of money. And I promise you, we made that video for much less than you could ever imagine. Fully independent as a DistroKid release. And we brought the whole village together. And we get to set, we execute. And I remember, if you guys remember that trailer where it's the young girl talking over the audio, Ajay wrote that section right before it came out. Right before the video came out. He added that in 3 days before. He recorded that audio. He wrote it and then recorded it with our niece. And we had that trailer, and I remember telling Ajay, I go, you know what? We're not even gonna go vertical for this. We're gonna go thank you, Reese. It's so dope, dude. I'm like talking to like nobody, but there's 60 of you, and I hope this is good. But I go, we're gonna go horizontal. We're gonna go horizontal for this. And I think you should post it on TikTok and you should put on top, they still call us dirty. And he was like, bet, let's do it. And I think it doesn't really make sense to go vertical, you know, it doesn't, or it doesn't make sense to go horizontal. It's kind of insane. But this was an intrinsically viral idea. It wasn't a fucking viral video. The idea of immigrants, of people of color, of black and brown people feeling dirty is more compelling than any individual or even fucking song. And so to answer your question, when's the right moments to go horizontal versus vertical? It's whatever tells the story best. In that moment, the story had to be told horizontal. But if we didn't put that premise on, they still call us dirty. I don't think it would have sparked. And that trailer set the tone. We posted that trailer on Wednesday. The record was ready to drop by Friday. Unlike Deepika, we knew exactly what to do. Trailer goes, we have our out now asset ready. And at first it was like a brown story, right? You started seeing brown people be like, oh, this is so cool. Like I relate, the dancers, blah, blah, blah. But then we were like, no, 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 this is bigger than that. And we started recontextualizing the story on Dirty to be like, this is just about anybody who's ever felt dirty. We saw politics happening and things that I can't really talk about right now because of sensitivity, but we saw a lot of racism and a lot of really strong political leaders who were also uh, pushing agendas against, let me not mince words actually, fuck that. The ICE raids were happening and the racism against Indians, South Asians, Black people, immigrants, all these kinds of people were happening. And in the midst of it, and I thought we can't ignore this. This is intrinsically political. And we had to be delicate, but we weren't afraid. And we shared every day. And we tried to platform the women in the video. We tried to platform the larger story. We tried to platform the fans. It wasn't supposed to be about code. And in the comments, we got some backlash. There were a lot of really, really, really incredible people saying, hey, is this a ripoff of Black culture? You know, is this, you know, who are you to take up the space? And they are completely right. Code is still going to have to prove his space in hip hop. There's no doubt about that. But it was also cool to see people responding to those comments, being like, you know what, but this is what this is what he's trying to say, you know? And ultimately, all we can do is move with intention and know that we are occupying space that's not ours and be able to recognize that and be mindful of it and keep sharing great art. So those two moments I'm really, really proud of, and that's some of the psychology behind it. I know we're like low-key hitting time, but let's do one last case study and I'll open up for questions. Breaking Nafis's bougie. Meeting Nafis was like everything I've just talked about embodied. Basically, Rajid, shout out Rajid, Nafis DM DOST account. He was like, dude, I'm a Bengali kid. I fuck with what you do. Rajid and Nafis got drinks, and Nafis and Nafis is in the chat. And this is such a good slide. Shout out Yaron. And Rajid was just like, yo, you got to meet this kid. And at that time, I was like not interested in taking any management clients. I was not interested in anything. I was very tired, and he was just like you have to meet him, bro. You just have to meet him. Like I was like, okay, bet. And we hop on Zoom, and I'll never forget the Zoom. We talked for like an hour, and Nafis is just he reminded me of all of the beautiful things in the world, bro. He's just magic. He's such an incredible human. He has such a bright soul. He's so curious, and he was working so hard. He had fucking 6 years of releasing music, of posting content, of building his community. He moved to the country by himself when he was fucking 19 years old to afford him. He left many other countries in between. Like he was a magnet of energy. And he also had built a really, really compelling base as an artist, you know? And at the end of our call, he was getting emotional and he was like, man, I've not really found a community like this before. And we hung up the call, and I remember me and Rajid were talking, and he's like, so what do you think, man? And I was like, dude, everything I've ever done, everything we've ever done has led up to wanting to support this kid and make sure that he is able to realize his dreams. I'm getting emotional talking about this. It's so weird. With my glasses on, so you guys don't catch me tripping. And basically, like, I go, and Nafis was already a fan of what we had built in terms of like, he was a fan of some of the artists we had worked with. I think he followed KOGO at the time, which was such an honor for me. But I just really fell in love with this story. And I looked at Nafis and I was like, hold on, like, there's nobody that represents what you represent to the world. And I can't let the industry take advantage of that. I think that was the feeling. And, perfect. Nafis trusted me and we locked in arm in arm. And I remember we had a couple records, right? We had Spin You Around doing really well. Stephanie was already released 2 years ago. But Nafis always told me, I really love Stephanie. And I remember asking him this question because we did this mission, vision, values exercise. We did all of this. I would go see him in New York. We would go for walks around Central Park. And I would just talk to him for the first couple months. I just wanted to understand where is he trying to go? Because Nafis was also thrown into so much so young that I wanted to just help soften the landing and be able to guide him so when he's ready to figure out himself, he can, but also to let this momentum grow as he's, you know what I mean? It's all at once. And I remember he told me, I was like, what song, if you could pick a song to blow up for you, which one would it be? Like, what feels most Nafis to you? And he said, Stephanie immediately. And I remember going for walks and I remember like, I have to find the melody. I have to find the melody. I have to find the melody. Because none of this starts without the music, right? And I remember listening to Stephanie and I was like, I was like, hold on. I sent it to my least musical friend, like one of my best friends in the world. I'm not going to say his name, but he knows who he is. He just loves Ray Shremmerd and like old Migos. He's probably the least musical person I know, which means he's the best ear for whether or not a song matters. He fucking loves Stephanie. And I was like, you know what? Nafis believes in this. I believe in this. My homie believes in this. Let's ride. We had a distro deal. We had less than like $1,000 in spend, or less than a couple $1,000s to spend on many songs. They were spending on Spin You Around, and they thought Spin You Around was going to go. We were doing 1,000 UGCs a day. It wasn't converting. Nafis called me once. He was like, "What the fuck is going on, bro? Streams are going down." I was like, "Shit, this kid's gonna. I don't know. I don't know." But I was like, "Just trust me, brother. Just trust me." And we all believed in Stephanie. We knew Stephanie was going to be something, and we kept paying attention. We kept paying attention. And Nafis texted me a post. It was an anime post. He's like, dude, this anime post has like 5,000 views. Like, it's a Stephanie. And I was like, oh, cool. And we saw streaming go from like 500 streams a day to like 1,000 or something, like something it's pretty small, like you five, like, nice little, thing, but nothing crazy. And I was like, okay, cool. And I go, Nafis, we have to do this 10 times. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, we have to do this 10 times. Whatever they just did with this anime post, we got to do it 10 times. And I called one of my partners and I go, can we replicate this right now? And we hit up some of the anime pages, we went guerrilla marketing on them, and we had 10 more posts go up. And in 3 days, that record went from 1,000 streams a day to 10,000 streams a day to 66,000 streams a day. And by the fourth day, it was at 125,000 streams a day on Spotify. And I remember calling Nafis and I go, I'm going to take a plane to New York right now because your email is about to go crazy. He's like, why are you coming? I was like, trust me, every single label in the world is about to reach out to you. We need to be ready. And I flew out there, and as soon as Monday came around, everyone hit us up, and I go, oh, I happen to be in New York. And we took our meetings, and we walked in that meeting, and people at first thought this was just an internet kid. And we walked in there and we said, this is the first this is the first Bengali pop star in the world, and we're gonna make this shit happen. And by the way, I'm sure there's been many other Bengali pop stars, but for me at the time, I was like, Nafis is the one. And I think we were able to move mountains. And shout out Benicio, my brother at 10K Projects Atlantic, who believed. And honestly, we worked that record independently. We had 3 months of conversations. We worked that record independently to 250,000 streams a day. And at that point, I called in Rajiv, my brother. I go, hey, Rajiv, we got to go do it again. We have a hot audio. Let's go put gas on this. Let's go introduce Nafis. If you look at that clip on the left right there, that's one of his first hi-fi TikToks. Nafis was posting a lot of photos at the time. I was like, Nafis, you're so interesting. Your personality is so compelling. We have to show more. And we sprinted and we sprinted. We shot more videos. We got to 250,000 streams a day. We signed, a major label record deal with an incredible company in 10K Projects in December. And without spending any money in 3 weeks on Christmas Day, that record is at 500,000 streams a day last year. And the feast is already on the path to recoupment. January of 2025, we look up and we go, we got to drop this EP. We drop an EP and the feast works his ass off. We all work his ass off. I'm so proud of him for the way he persevered. We were just coaching, but he was fucking Kobe Bryant with it. We dropped an EP. He did a sold out headline tour. And I think Nafis is going to be an artist forever. There's so much I can unpack with that. I'm moving at the speed of light because I'm way over time. But I hope that these stories show that it's a little bit of math and a lot of magic. And that intersection is the spark. So with that, thank you guys for fucking letting me yap for so long. I don't have anything else to say, but I'd love to take any questions.
You guys can feel free to drop any questions in the chat. We'll read them off to Amit. And yeah, that was amazing. I just learned so much. And hearing just the story behind a lot of these moments is emotional. So I understand why you felt that way. We had W's in the chat for just how real all of that was. Really, we really do appreciate you so much.
Thank you
Any
so much.
questions? Okay, here we are. Ready?
Yeah.
This is kind of long, but I'm gonna read you the entirety of it. This is from Rish. She says, "Hi, my name is Rish. I'm an artist born in California, but in Illinois right now. I created a genre called Bali Tech, which is a fusion genre. I created that blends traditional Indian sounds like tablas and sitars with modern hip hop, pop, R&B, and cloud rap trap, as well as invoking different pieces of Indian culture. He's been promoting his music on TikTok and Reels, and I've made a few music videos before. He says his goal right now is to show the world that no matter what race you are, you can express yourself through your narrative, your music, and be proud of your identity. He says lots of artists try to be someone else, and he wants to show people that they can be themselves. So he just has a few questions about marketing and how he should go about it. The main question he has is how should he think about balancing organic growth versus investing in paid marketing dash PR? He doesn't really have that much money to be spending because he's a college student, but he's asking what you recommend his focus should be.
Yeah, that's a great question. Rish, are you I think I might have heard of your music recently from my friend Unky. I think I know who you are. Which is fire. Yes, dude, I love that song. Unky, whatever song that is, I really like that song. Yeah, that's just hard, bro. You're doing great stuff. Great song. Great song. I think that you don't need to pay for anything until you know something works. That's my thesis. Like you shouldn't, this is a hot take, but I don't think you should spend $1 in ads until you know there's an asset that's already connecting, right? Like to me, all of the like the Dirty and Deepika campaign were 0.99. We didn't spend any money on those campaigns, at the beginning for the first like for all of the swell that people were impressed by, it wasn't paid. And so I think Rish, the main thing is like iterate on the content until you see even the micro engagement, even like if even like there's like normally you get 10 comments and you get 30, right? Or normally you get like 80 likes and you get 200 likes one time. Whatever that is, if it's a fucking photo, if it's a video, if it's an audio recording, if it doesn't even include you in it, and like that becomes your what I call a smoking gun, right? And you double down on that. So I don't think you should pay for any marketing that's boosting assets unless you know that those assets are performing, right? And then you can go on a platform like Symphony and it's like, cool, just boom, boom, boom. But you have to do the work of identifying what those assets are, and what people are responding to. Like with the way we decided to drop Deepika was because the first post wasn't a viral post. It was Ajay in the studio with our buddy Sumit behind him, and it got 100 comments of people responding. And every other demo we did got like every other demo we teased got like 30 or 40. So it was obvious that Deepika was the one. Dirty was the same way. We dropped Yearning, we dropped Deshaun. But when we dropped Dirty, we got like 90 comments. And we're like, okay, there's something here. So even with your music and with your content, let the audience really like rid yourself of that relationship, and just let the audience speak. Your job as an artist is to create. Sometimes the thing that's going to blow up is going to be totally different than the thing that you like. So hopefully that's helpful.
Siraj is asking, he's still trying to clear up what the mission looks like. Is mission the tangible steps in the short term while the vision is the long-term dream? What did the mission look like with Nafis?
The mission, that's a great question. The mission is not the short-term steps. The mission is the long-term purpose. And so for Nafis, that was actually a really deep soul searching that we talked about a lot at the beginning. And what we landed on for him in this current moment was his mission was to make young kids, especially young kids from all over the world, who maybe didn't look like a certain way, right? They didn't maybe fit the traditional aesthetic of being, the pretty girl or the jock boy, but make those kids around the world feel cool, right? Like we called his tour the International Dream Tour because we wanted this mission around the feast to be about making kids from all over the world feel like the cool kid in New York. The video for Stephanie looks like it's like a rap coded video. It's like very like low lighting and it's shot in a lot of places that rapper in a school that a lot of rappers do videos in. Like it's meant to be gritty. So the mission is like, what is the larger movement you're associated with? For Nafis, it's like, dude, there's immigrant kids. There's 14 to 18-year-olds all around the world who speak different languages who can be like, damn, I got Nafis's bougie as my Steve Lacy. Like that shit's fire. You know what I mean? So it's more macro, but like the mission can't realize itself unless it's really clear on like what the artist's vision for that mission is, and then also what the values that indicate it is, and then of course the music, the live, and all that that's underneath it. So hopefully that helps whoever asked that.
What's the most audacious thing you have done when you got the chance to be in the room where it happens?
What does that mean? It's the most audacious thing I've
There's
ever done.
Shri. Maybe, I don't know, a bold move you pulled
Oh,
when
a
you
bold
made
move
it
I
into a
pulled.
room you didn't think you'd be in.
I remember oh, that's a great question. I can't share the one that I want to share just because it involves someone that's it's like private, but I think that honestly, I think the bravest thing that I've ever done and I continue to do is uh push back on an artist that I love. I think that's the scariest thing because I'm so like I care so much and I know that ultimately it's not my art, it's their art. So I think just being able to not say no, I don't think I'm ever going to say no, but being able to push back like, hey, is this as good as you think it is? Or is this really you? Or is this as original as what you want this mission or what you want this to look like? I think that is really the most audacious thing. I think I'm even I and KOGO's not for everyone. Like we don't lie. We're not just gonna like we'd rather lose money than lie. We want to push. So I think the most audacious thing and this is a very heady answer, but I mean this. I think the most audacious thing I've done in general is not focus on trying to maximize my short-term management commission and instead focus on trying to build real artist careers. And sometimes that means disagreeing with people that can fire you any minute, but being like, yo, we're family. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But I'm not here to let you walk into quicksand, and you're not here to let you walk into quicksand.
That's real. Quajo is saying he's an artist from Northern Virginia, and as someone who has the music, visuals, and now budget, he hasn't figured out the marketing yet to really make a splash. How do you advise what his next step should be?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. So he has the music, the visuals, and now he's saying he has some budget, but he hasn't figured out the marketing element of what he should fully be doing. And he's asking what you suggest the next step should be. A little bit more context. He says he has high quality visuals and tries to recycle them on TikTok, plus original content as well as Symphony campaigns, but can't seem to make anything fully click.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think my answer would definitely be like I would look at the visuals and if you want to send them to me, I'm happy to do this just off the love for sure. Like I would look at the visuals and figure out other ways we can recontextualize them, which means either like with new text premises associated with these videos, right? So like they still call us dirty premise, like iterating on the premises, and then maybe also finding other pages that maybe will appreciate your content more than your own, right? So it's like trying to find other pages that third-party pages that maybe even micro pages that maybe fit this content better, and testing it there. I think also trying like new accounts, like bro, like TikTok is so fried where like you could create 7 accounts, you have a chance of blowing up on all of them. But this is one thing I'll flag. Like, I don't suggest anyone make visuals, or if you have new visuals to make, as you approach the new visuals you make them with the marketing in mind. Like the visual is a vessel for marketing, right? Like it's art at its core. It's also going to be manipulated to market your music, right? So it's like when you're like to me, that's why it's so important to understand where your audience is before you're even creating those visuals, because then intrinsically you'll know what to do with them because you're walking in with that mindset. So it's okay that you already created a bunch right now. It's actually perfect. It's just I think now you're gonna have to reverse engineer it a little bit and try and figure out where those people live, that it exists. But yeah.
What's your morning routine?
Dude, I wake up at like 7 a.m. ish. Yeah, 7 a.m. normally. I try not to look at my phone. I like say like affirmations to myself every morning because like we gotta stay alive. And then I go to the bathroom and I put on the first song of the Andre 3000 Flute Project. Sounds so pretentious, but it's a really good song, genuinely. And it's like a 9-minute song, so it's like 9 minutes of me like doing my skincare, brushing my teeth. It probably takes longer than that. And then I'll go for a walk immediately if I'm at home. If I'm traveling, I probably won't, but I'll try to go for a walk because if I don't walk, I'm cooked. Um, Dude, someone gave red sheet. That's so funny. And then I'll go for a walk and then I'll come back. And I don't do this every day, but I'm trying to meditate every day. That's a new thing in the last 6 months. But I do try to meditate for 10 minutes. It's a Spotify meditation. I'm not like a fucking guru. It's a 10-minute Spotify meditation. And in my walk, I'm listening to a podcast. I'm like a nerd. So I'm listening to like a music podcast, but not like corny podcasts. Like I'm listening to stories. I listen to stories of artists all the time. There's so many podcasts that I can recommend. Dude, all the answers to your questions are already exist because people have tried it a bunch. There's clues everywhere. There's not answers, but there's clues. So I just listen to the clues every morning, and then I get to my desk, and then I'll normally work for a little bit, or I will call somebody. So that's my morning routine.
Nice. Shaylin is asking, after the initial viral moment where a few reels have reached over 1 million plus views, what are those core next steps that you should focus on building?
I think after you go viral, you have to like you have to build a funnel, right? You have to figure out how to go from viral to really putting your fans in one place, whether it's like an IG group chat, whether it's a Discord, whether it's a third-party platform, whatever it is. Um, and you also have to tell your story then. Like if you're going viral, that means there's a swell of attention around like a sliver of who you are. So you kind of have to identify what other slivers do you want to introduce to the world in that moment, because you do have like the opportunity to introduce more slivers. So you have to move very quickly when you have that. Like that's the biggest, one of the biggest takeaways from all this, y'all. If you see an artist who goes viral and then you're like, damn, why didn't it happen? It's because they didn't move fast enough on the moment. Like the internet will run away from a trend very quickly. So I think right now you have to think about, okay, how do I convert this to me? So what is new content I can make, or other ways I can like if there's already existing content, is there BTS of that content? Is there other ways you can recontextualize that viral content? Can people react to that viral content? You want to milk the hell out of that initial asset while also figuring out how to build your own like a different vertical of storytelling that's about you as an artist. So it's I would say that in tandem.
I like that. Layla's asking if you're available for management.
I am not available for management, but KOGO is going to launch like very exciting things at the beginning of next year in terms of expanding our artist services to be able to work with um, new artists, over the years. But right now, we are booked and busy on the music management side.
Amazing. How do you think artists and managers should be using AI in their workflows?
I think I mean, I had to do everything for a long time. I had to learn everything. I had to ingest the record, market the record, help other artists make the record, go tour the record, produce the video for the record, all of that. I've found that over the years, like trying to do everything and be everything is never good. And I think when at the beginning of the music industry, you have so much imposter syndrome, you think you have to be the jack of all trades. You don't. You just have to be really, really concise and aware of who you are and like the two or three things you're the best at and be comfortable with that evolving over time. Um, and so what was the question again? I was answering it, but
No, you're good. How do you think artists and managers should be using AI in their work?
yeah. So I think with that in mind, like I think AI is an amazing tool to automate the shit that ultimately anyone can do. So, there's certain processes that labels have for when a record comes out. There's a pre-save link that maybe is generated or this or that or whatever. If you're an independent artist, I think AI is an incredible technology to be able to automate some of the things that maybe you would think, "Oh, I need to publish this for, I need this." Like, yo, if you need a bio, like, get a bio from AI after giving it enough information that makes sense about you if you're not a great writer. I'm not saying that's going to replace writers or publicists at all, but I think AI is a very interesting tool for just like basic operations, before an artist has a manager or while an artist has a manager or as a manager is trying to scale up. So I think just never automate the music, never outsource the music, never outsource the visuals, never automate the visuals, never automate the community, never outsource the community. Everything else just fucking automate. It's fine.
Sujoy is asking, how do you go about approaching and engaging with your fans and creating new ones without it feeling
I think you have to follow the like give, ask approach. Like I think you have to give to your fans like 6 or 7 times and then ask. Whether that give is like a music video, a release, a party, a collab, a press shot. Like give, and then ask. So at that cadence, if you can tell when artists are inauthentic, it's because they're just asking all the time. And you're like, you look like fucking like a telephone marketer. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense. And I think some artists feel like, oh, we have to do that in modern age. No, you don't. I think people want to feel like they're stumbling upon you as an artist. So if you're just being yourself, Montel Fish is a crazy example of this. Like his whole content strategy was very like, oh, I just stumbled upon this guy. And that made it more authentic. So I think just like make sure you're on a healthy cadence of giving more than you're asking to your fans, and they'll forever want to give. They won't feel like you're scamming, just like a relationship.
Valid. Brandon's asking, what's your approach when curating the creative approach to live shows?
Dude, my approach is I think of it like an album. Like I think of it as like a whole rollout. Like we roll things out, we roll our events out, and we think of the creative experience around the events like we think about a record or a live show, or excuse me, like a record or a visual. Like basically, like to me, all of our events are just like music videos. They just happen to have a bunch of people. Like I think that every part of the experience should be um within resources, should be connected to the overall kind of mission. So I think my approach is literally tying the live show into the art and figuring out how they could literally feel seamless and almost like an extension of the visual world.
What moment are you currently looking forward to the most?
I'm What moment am I looking forward to the most? My brother and I are going to India for the first time, and we're going to be meeting a lot of great artists there and going to Rolling Loud in India and getting a chance to see our Dadi and Dada over there and see family there. So I'm very excited about that. That's going to be pretty transformative.
That does sound amazing. Jag Gats is saying he's a conscious Indian rapper from Las Vegas. And what would you suggest are the best ways to build a management team?
Um, Great to meet you, Jag. What's up, man? I think the best way to build a management team is just to keep dropping and then great managers will find you. I know that's such an annoying way to put it, but I mean it. Like if you're on this call right now and like you know everything you know about the communities around, like if you make and create great stuff, like people will find you, people will find you. I think doing stuff like this, like showing up at a panel like this, reaching out, all of that, it might take some time, but people will get back to you. But in terms of management, bro, rarely do I see a situation where an artist is chasing a manager and it works out. Like every time I've worked with an artist, not that we've had to chase each other, but there's this mutual energy and excitement. And I think that's what you want. So as an artist, like you're running for your life, they're running for their lunch, you know? So you have to find someone who wants to run for their life with you, which means you just have to be running and running and running. And you see someone on the way, you're like, oh, you want to join? Well, the stakes are pretty high over here. And they're like, yeah, I'm down. And they're like, all right, come. But if you're just sitting on the bench and someone like, and like, or if they're just sitting on the bench and you run up to them and they don't want to run, bro, they're already sitting down. They're not going to get up and run with you. I think I learned that the hard way. So just keep creating, bro. Just keep creating and like put together your ideal team, your ideal manager, your ideal everything. Make it very clear in your head every day and it'll show up at your door.
Amit, I feel like that's pretty much all of the questions we got. Nathan's asking how he can get in contact with you if that's a possibility. We do really, really appreciate your time here today, all of the information that you shared, the energy you shared with us. We have a lot to, I feel like, continue to digest as the day goes on. This session will also be live on YouTube. So if anyone wants to go back and refresh on anything Amit talked about, that is available to you guys as well. And if there's a way that you prefer people to get in contact with you, whether on social media, email, LinkedIn, just let everyone know. And yeah, we really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you everyone who joined. That's so nice of you guys. And yeah, you can connect with me on